I know probably panel sessions, there's often, even though it sounds like there's going to be a lot of interacting, there almost is never very much interaction. So we should really pick on people if you don't start asking this question. Because it is meant to be a little bit more interactive. So maybe one of the things that would be good to get from maybe starting almost to the end. What would people like? What was missing from this? Was there a particular thing that you felt a focus area was not focused on enough? Test cases, was the test cases, should we be doing an SUV vehicle, not a notch-backed bike? And would it be good to start hearing some maybe some and then we can debate it a little bit. So yeah, okay.
I think we've all outlined that we really care about the deltas in our designs. We care about the deltas in our designs, and in a world where we have to choose between absolute accuracy and delta accuracy, we care more about the delta accuracy in general. It seems to me like there wasn't as much focus on what the results meant from case 2A to 2B, let's say. So it felt like there was a lot of really great work done, especially across the TFGs on, let's say, case 2A, but there was less applicability in how the results that you may be synthesized for 2A compared to 2B, and if that got you anything more in that direction we're looking for.
Okay. Burkhard, did you want to take that? Was there a reason? Was it just the volume of submission?
No, I think my perspective here is that, let's say we focused on the TFGs this time. We tried to get that off the ground. We also wanted to be sure there were a lot of you who supported the TFGs throughout the entire year. And so we wanted to be sure that that work gets presented. And you have a chance to show what you have done and share your findings. That is something where we also then, at least on my side, I don't know whether you had the same feeling, but when we approached the workshop and we had to distribute the slots, we kind of said, hey, we are missing this, what we had previously, where at the end there was a wrap up where Gary would talk about all his observations in case 1, and I would talk about all the observations in case 2, where I certainly would have talked about the deltas. Yeah, but then we said, okay, let's focus on the TFGs. Let's ensure that is captured. I try to. You obviously heard me saying that. Hey, I'm looking at this high level, and I didn't see much change. Yeah, that was my very brief summary, and but that is obviously not detailed enough. There's more to say, but it's certainly something we also recognize that we have not focused enough on this, and something we need to think about how we can do this in the future.
Yeah, and
Then how good this works.
Yeah, let's see. I'd agree. From the SRS TFG point of view, it was a question of the motivation first to try and understand, and then the looking at one case and trying to understand what's going on and why is the starting point, and then it was a matter of time. So the data's there. And it's also in the dashboard, and that'll be available for people to look at. And the dashboard also automatically gives you the deltas, and then plots the deltas and so on. But yeah, I agree. We didn't have the emphasis there this time, and it's a thing for the future.
Do you think it would be good though? Were you thinking more of having more geometry points? Because if you just have one, I guess you could kind of get it right. Whereas I remember when Lawrence in Formula One, we're looking at methodology changes. If you just had one delta, I mean, that you needed like 5 or something to really see if you've got a general thing. But then you're asking people to run 5 times more simulations. So,
in a perfect world for me, obviously, yes, there would be more geometry changes, which I know is a big ask, especially of Burkhard and his team for the drive air case. But I think even still to that point, I want to see geometry modifications that are vastly different and in very different areas of the car. So it doesn't, ideally you might look at let's say a spoiler, for example, and maybe do 2 spoilers that are the same design variable that's changed, so you can see if you can even predict a trend in that design variable across different submissions. Like, for example, you have a tire air deflector, maybe you have a spoiler modification, maybe you have some form of fairing, but ideally more geometry configurations. That way we can really push to test how good the community's delta prediction capability is.
Yeah, and I think these geometry modifications are available. Yeah, so we have, if I include tire changes, I think we have 15, 20 different variants for the driver. Yeah, let me think about this. And I think there might be opportunity for sharing more data. I'm a little bit concerned that if we have kind of too many variants, different people will look at different topics and we will not see the big picture at the end anymore because we get too distributed. That's the same feeling I have if we keep adding more test cases. Yeah? I'm not saying there will be other test cases which will be excellent test cases, so that's, I'm not arguing this, but either we could all guarantee that we could look at all the test cases all the time so that we always have a comprehensive set of data. Otherwise, I fear we're all talking different stories and there's little overlap in what we are discussing. And but again, that doesn't mean that we could perhaps think about adding one or the other specifically relevant variant.
So there's a comment online as well from Marian Zastoni, who said, I believe that we should also invest more in understanding the robustness of the analysis. We've seen several times that what works for a single scenario might not work for another. Having 2 variants of aero SUV are different car type would allow us to generalize conclusions.
I still don't think it's possible even with that. I mean, each at least from the physical perspective, even each car, each wake is quite unique. So when we start to generalize, it's going to be very hard because even if you make minor changes to the geometry, you can completely change the wake behavior. And that is something quite difficult to capture with just 2 objects. Again, when we have, for instance, let's say 2 cases that we're simulating, then the next time somebody will come and say, well, we should have more so that we can generalize better. So this is a never-ending problem. And I agree with Burkhard here that we kind of focus our energy on solving one problem correctly. And then maybe try the same approach on the next one when this is solved. At least that's how I would look at it.
And perhaps to add one thought to this, I think if I would see something attractive, and I've seen a lot of attractive things, we'll certainly go back home and we'll look at this. So that's for sure. We are not stopping with this one test case that doesn't provide all the answers we need. Certainly.
One other maybe topic to stimulate some discussion, not to pick on you, Gary, too much, which is what is the value that people place on having one more academic case and one driver? Because we're having a lot of discussion now about the driver, but we have a test case 1, and we still have more than 40 submissions on it, and people valued it. But I guess it's a debate, isn't it? Like, how do we need to do something more? Do people find it useful? Can we do anything more to make it more appealing? I don't know what you think, Gary, and what do you see?
I guess one of the criticisms would be that they are very distinct. We're not in any way overlapping and synergy between them and reading across, and perhaps we could do that better. Now, I think we always argue that case 1 was there partly to get a wider breadth of input, and I think realistically, as a university resources, we couldn't run the sort of cases a lot of the industry guys are doing, which don't have. Well, maybe some people do. I mean, most of it's going free HPC, free HPC all the time. So having something that's simpler is good. But I think you're right that maybe we're not making the most of the 2. Because I think in a funny way, perhaps case 1 is too simple. Perhaps the driver is too complicated, and we haven't got something quite in the middle there that's a little bit easier.
to make its way in there, the case one, we still haven't understood, we still haven't got the base pressure right. And that's what it's really good. It's a really good case for that. It's simple and it's all about the base pressure. Like, okay, one can definitely focus on the base pressure. And we still haven't got it right. We still haven't understood what's going wrong. And then there was this tantalizing glimpse at this very expensive fluidizole LES, which gets the base pressure right. So it says, okay, it's, because CFD people tend to go, the experiment's but that's kind of okay. Your best CFD is getting it right. So the experiment obviously is a complete junk. So what's going on? And we haven't understood that yet. And then about read across, I saw some partners were looking at case 2. They were looking at there's pressure probes along the bumper and down the center line of the base, which we hadn't been looking at so far. Yeah. And so we could read across. We could say, okay, can you get the base pressure for case 1 right? And then we could look at the base pressure on case 2 and see, is there the same thing happening? Are all of the hybrid methods tending to be one side of the LES more accurate? So that would be what I'd take away for when we're analysing the results. We can do that now.
I think it's a good point. So my concern always with the drive air is that you may get the base pressure wrong, and then you've got the wheel wrong and somebody else wrong, and they all conspire and you get a great drag. You've got it for all the wrong reasons. And so only if you've got that base pressure right can you claim that your drag is correct.
Yeah, that's what I said in one of the talks, that if your pressure distribution is not right, I'm not very interested in your drag prediction. It's a number, okay. We're tracking it, but I hope I've shown a little bit with this. The wind tunnels have been very, very, very consistent in their pressures. We are not by far as consistent. And even with these consistent pressure measurements, the wind tunnels will give you different drag values. It would be nice if I could just share these drag values so that you get a bit of impression how it distributes, but that's something which the ERD community did not agree to, so I cannot. As I said, the entry card is you get the pressure distribution right, otherwise it's pointless to talk about tracking. That's simply as such.
Yeah, please.
I have a question. Is this telling that the relevant target for the CFD should get the pressure distribution and not the drag value, because the drag value is weaker?
No, I think that's not the conclusion. That's not what I'm saying. I think what I'm saying is that at the end, I think Ananda said that before, ultimately we are interested in absolute drag prediction. That's certainly true. Yeah, and then we are on the way to this. We are interested in the delta drag predictions. Yeah, that's everybody stated that on the panel very clearly. My statement is only these discussions are questionable discussions if your pressure distribution is right. It's a prerequisite which we need to fulfill. That's what I'm saying. We will not stop at this end, but I will to be drastic here when I'm saying, if you show me a crappy pressure distribution, I'm not interested in hearing your drag prediction. It's pointless. It's whatever it is. It's you need right results for the right reason, and that's why I'm keep beating on this CP distribution. And it seems to be that was something I have to admit I only found out after we had last year this major wind tunnel correlation study. These pressure measurements are extremely consistent, extreme. And if I say that, that is in respect to what we are predicting in CRE, where the spread is much larger. If I say it's extremely consistent, and it's still different enough to give you different drag values. Yeah, and so there are two ways to look at this. Yeah, even this is not good enough if you want to accurately predict the drag in one specific wind tunnel. You have to do even one step further. But we are still working on the first step, and that's where I would like to see us focusing on. That's
maybe we can. Yeah, please.
Where we have it already about different cases that we have. My fear is that we already discussed it with Vangelis and some of the others in the pauses in between, that maybe since we now have the ANSA measured with 160 million cells, and we talked about, okay, probably you need to run it at least 3 seconds. Maybe at some point we're reaching it and where we definitely rule out students on running these cases because they don't have the resources for it. So maybe we need to think about that this could be an issue at some point, and maybe we need to either pause some mesh or an in-between thing. But it would be sad if we at some point only have the big companies who can run the case too. It's just my thought.
Yeah.
So just checking, there's also a comment from Charles as well saying, but keep in mind that in physical tests, averaging time is 1 to 2 minutes. Even with the GPU, we can't report this with simulation.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the academic point, we discussed this, and that was kind of my allusion to case 1, is we felt that on one hand, we feel pleased that there's been more OEM involvement. Several of you have said, oh, I came to the last one, I didn't get involved, but now I have, and I want to go. And that's fantastic. But we're also, I guess, the reason that you come to this is you want to see new methods. Because if you're just hearing the standard thing, you get that privately one-on-one anyway from software vendors. So I guess you're coming here to see new stuff. So we need the academic community to contribute, because by necessity, they're probably more likely working a lot upstream. Sorry. So yeah, that's a good question. And we have seen a slight reduction, I think, in the number of academic groups.
Yeah, and I think PhD student attendance is quite low. And the person that I'd like to see is some more younger people that are learning from these experienced people, so they become your employees in the future.
Yeah. So we agree. I think we're definitely not talking, in my opinion, about getting rid of a small case and only having a more complex. It's just how do we set it up? How do we make sure that people are taking value from it? And maybe you're right, having like course of simulations almost as a designed specifically for PhD students or interns or people who just want to get used to running the case. It's sort of a separate subset almost. It's not considered as the mesh you would submit results on a higher accuracy, but it could help people just to train and get used to things. Because it's true, the whole point of this workshop is also to help educate. And if it just becomes too focused on the big problems, we're going to lose all of the.
Perhaps something we can take on and perhaps working with Vangelis and see. We said before that perhaps we kind of played safe to some extent, with the mesh. So I think there is perhaps opportunity to reduce mesh count a bit. Again, don't want to push things too far, but then still, it might be helpful.
There's a question from CJ.
Yeah. So I think pivots on this relationship of trying to have more students or like academic involved. Is there something that the group here is aware of that works and serves as a good validation, rigorous validation case that's even simpler than Windsor? So we're not doing any mesh conversion studies really.
Do the Amit Carbody?
Sure, maybe that one's better, but I'm not familiar. I mean, I'm tracking back to aerospace, high lift workshop. We try to do a validation study. Drag prediction workshop, we do a validation study. And there's 10 mesh resolutions that are tested for grid conversions. Here we're usually not getting drag right for the one targeted metric that we're trying to do. So whereas high lift, we're largely getting CL max correct, given sufficient resources and controls. And I'm struggling to find that.
Yeah, we did. I'd say there's one partial reason for that we did do some mesh refinement studies. Most people who did it found very small changes, whereas obviously with the high lift there's a much bigger sensitivity. I think, but it's still a valid point. I don't know if anybody has a thought on a validation case. You mean almost verification a little bit,
Yeah, a bump or a blunt body geometry on the ground or something. I don't know. That's why I'm asking the group here.
Oh yeah.
So I'm usually skeptical when the test cases become too academic, because I think this shifts the
So I just repeat that.
I'm sometimes skeptical when the test cases become too academic, because I think this shifts the focus for the CFD codes to be able to capture things in turbulence like boundary layout, laminar to turbulent transition, which is, in my opinion, not so relevant for real industrial cases, because in industrial cases you have circuit buttons, you have edges, you have sharp edges, you have the wind screen writers, which gives you much more tolerance to small errors. So now on a real car, I think the capability of the code to get the laminar turbulence transition correct is not so relevant. Whereas I think for the Windsor body, it's much more relevant. And I don't know, because like this is a really difficult topic. Laminar turbulent transition, I don't know of any like Canada is called what it's called, but it's not really, not yet, we are not there yet. So this is far off. And so I think when one focuses too much on pure academic, like a hump, this is the reverse separation on a hump, it's somewhere. Like it's not defined at all, it can fluctuate, you need even longer times, and so I think this is much more challenging than an industrial case.
That's a comment online from Richard Hammer, who said, is there value in geometry changes mentioned earlier being made on lower resolution models as university studies? So it's combining the comments over there with
Maybe we could just, do you want to make a quick comment?
Yeah, exactly. Adding to that, how would a scale model work here? I mean, we don't really need to simulate the full car. We could maybe scale it down further and maybe correlate it with a much smaller wind tunnel. Even the drive air, I mean, the drive air is quite easily scalable, and I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, we have data for 25% drive air PIV.
Exactly.
We have 3 variants.
And that's also quite an interesting case for students to work on, because then the mesh demand is not that excessive.
Transition problem. Just wanted to maybe pivot a little bit to maybe get some of the thoughts of sort of summarising what's happened in the TFGs and some of your thoughts about where you'd like to go next. Astrid, do you want to maybe go first?
Yeah, I think these methods, they have come to stay. So I would actually just love to see more participants also contributing to the topic of AI and ML in the next years. And I do believe that there will be more, because I mean the number of software companies developing code just around this, and also already larger software companies also now jumping onto this topic and also developing their own methods. It's just increasing. So yeah, I think this topic at least is will stay.
And does anybody have a thought on that? How we could, how we did the AIML TFG? Is there any things that, as a group, you would like to see happen at the next workshop, or any feedback or thoughts of how to increase participation? Yes, please.
Not really specifically related to that, but to get the chance to listen to that. I think one of the interesting things would be to have unified metrics to evaluate those results that we have. And I suppose everybody on our team or TFG groups has done synthesis of the data in a certain way, and what Charles was saying was like the accuracy versus cost. Maybe this accuracy would be, I just think in some KPIs that we want to kind of synthesize the good results that shows what I was saying. You have to capture the pressure right, because otherwise it's meaningless of having the CD right, etc. So something that for each case we submit either simulation or AI results to get a kind of simplified picture, so that we can cluster all those results in one single metric, made more comparable.
I think this is actually something what we have been discussing previously, and I think we are also still like open for ideas how to generate or how to define this. So yeah.
I think we have made this one attempt. I think Charlie made a recommendation to do this average delta CP, and I think I still want to spend a bit more time with this because I think what I've seen is we have like these local, very sensitive areas of the drive here, and sometimes what I saw happening is that predictions which were pretty good, kind of at that specific location created large outliers, and then your average is affected. While I would say it's perhaps not the most relevant problem here at this stage. So again, I think I was skeptical at the beginning, to be honest, but it looked pretty good from what I've seen. Yeah, I think it pointed us clearly to really good results versus results where there were some problems. Actually, we identified that some participants had some issues with what they submitted. There was some wrong data. So I think that's something we can further explore, I would say.
I absolutely agree, and it's what I think we need some KPIs is a good word, or accuracy metrics where we can boil things down to like one number, and then to give an axis that's orthogonal to the cost axis that HPC was looking at. And I thought it was interesting in the Tom G University presentation, the last in the AIML. So look, they were training a retuned turbulence model, and then to do that they were defining, wake length, pressure. So they had there's a template there for how to combine metrics to sort of tell to judge how good a simulation is. So it was combining a range of different different metrics. So we could do something like the idea of the CP over all the points, plus look at some of the velocity planes and do a kind of and again, all the AIML, you're always, when you're training, you're always looking at how good am I. So that these methods are there to assimilate the data and to judge how good am I when you want to train something to be better. So we can do the same, and I think it would really help us at the top level of analysis, which is really hard when you get so much data and you have to start thinking about what to look at. So if we take that on board and try the next time round to define some KPIs, be clear about how they're defined, and then how we process them in a uniform manner, and be really.
When we specifically talk about the AI stuff, something I have in mind, it's nothing I can promise at this stage, but I'm planning to create some modifications of the drive here, which then specifically could be used for AI model validation. Yeah, so that we, at the moment, as Neil said, we might have excluded the base variant from the training data set, and then you can see how well you are doing. But then it's still, it's a bit problematic because this one is around for all the time, and if you have trying to model anyhow with big data, there's a chance it's somewhere included anyhow. So we perhaps create something new and something where I would like to do two things. One is have something which is perhaps kind of within the design space of the training data, and something which is kind of outside of the design space. You have to see a little bit what's the capability. So that's something we are thinking about, and let's see. Yeah, perhaps there's a chance.
Maybe just to pivot, I get a chance to speak, Herbert, on the HPC side. That was interesting yesterday. I don't know. Have you had any feedback, complaints?
No, not much feedback, but I have a couple of ideas. So we call this HPC. Well, for me, it's not HPC. So actually, I would say it's very small runs. So we say that this is a comparison of following kind of prediction workshop, and we have setting over there. And I believe that there is 1 or 2 orders of magnitude compared to what they are doing at the kind of prediction workshop. Am I right or wrong?
You mentioned the mesh count.
Yeah, in terms of the mesh count.
Yeah.
And then I said another thing that was like pushing And so when we started in 2019, the biggest supercomputer was 140 petaflops. Now it is nearly 10 times bigger. And our measures have only increased for the dry wire at 20%. So I believe we can push. And I try to relate this with what the industry claims as this noise. For me, it's just numerical error. And yeah, we use numerical method and they have numerical error. If you want better accuracy, you got to go to finer meshes, smaller time steps, as the professor from Ohio University said. And we might need to actually simulate 60 seconds or 2 minutes. And I didn't see that. So this is HPC. And also, I talked with a couple of commercial vendors, and one of the best numbers was $300. This is cheap. This was scale resolving simulation in 2 days with very nice results. He did some time conversion results there. It didn't show that much, but well. So, well, I want to push you to use HPC. We don't have to fall behind. I don't know where the Chinese are, but probably they are running 1 order of magnitude bigger than we are. So, I don't know. I want to.
Yeah,
I want to push the people. I'm very happy also about the Windsor model because, well, we did some very nice results, but I believe other company also has very nice results that Gary didn't show today, or he gave some hint that at least 2 codes were converging. And I believe that I talked with another company and they told me, well, we could have run 10 times more degrees of freedom without much issue. And well, I believe we should do this, and this could also, it could help several things. If we come with several codes with different hardwares and we all come to very close solutions, then I would say, well, if you really push the things, the noise is not there. But well, we haven't done it. And then from there, we could easily define these accuracy metrics.
Yeah, that's the point.
It's 300 for the best simulation. It was $300. We can go to 3,000. We spend quite a lot of money. People coming from San Francisco, whatever, and it will be cheaper in 2 years.
I think, but it's an absolutely valid point. We have been in situations where, I will not talk about numbers, but where you looked at the cost of a simulation and our aerodynamicists would look at this and say, I'm cheap. Yeah, take it into the winter. I'm cheaper. Yeah, and that it's real. Yeah, and wind tunnels are expensive. Yeah, so it's not that is actually cheap. And if you have to rent a wind tunnel, go somewhere, the cost per hour is very significant. But it's not that we have a super large margin, yeah, where we could just say, hey, invest so much more in HPC and you will still be fine. That's not an option.
One thing that the high lift did, which could potentially be done, especially through academic means, if there was access given to the Frontier system, I think, or one of the DOE machines, to give free time to participants. And that might be worth exploring whether some of the supercomputing centers.
At the European level, there is this Aero-HPC, and they are always pushing up us to have contact with the industry. And I believe that there are several offerings to do some tests, and with a couple of GPU hours, you can do much bigger results than we are doing now, and for free for research.
Because, so that could be something we could explore, where a lot of people here, I'm sure, the reason they couldn't go bigger or run low is they didn't have the computational resources, either because of money or just the queue time was too long. And if we could maybe try and arrange some allocation on a few machines, you obviously would have to apply for it. But I think there was a sort of, what's it called, directors, usually who run these supercomputing centers, they make sure they have a little sort of sludge fund.
I know that there is a win-win situation between the Euro-HPC project and whatever. If we can get these together, we show that there is an interaction between the industry, lots of European industry here, and it should be possible to be done.
It's a sort of hero calculation that could just do like the war resolved Windsor. You know, you saw that was what 1,000 GPUs for 100 hours or something. But that's quite small for these big machines. Right? It's not actually that much of their system. So yeah, it's a good point. You have to find an allocation of it.
But well, then we also have the big companies here, and I don't know if the numbers are right, and it is $300 of computation. I don't know how much the cost of the software is on top of that.
Yeah.
But well, they could run it themselves. So
I'd like to, I'd like to jump in on this sort of HPC side. So absolutely that there's much more room to do more and bigger simulations, and that's always a push, and it has value because we learn a lot from these big simulations, and I think also industrially it's important to have the capability for sort of ultra high fidelity when you need it. But I also think there's a big case for trying to get the most out of given resources. So if you know, there's a less is more. So if you can get more accuracy out of less resources, that's always going to be useful for a number of things. One is the energy consumption. So yeah, you mentioned that yesterday. Yeah. You know, it's not always that more is more. So if we can save energy, that's one thing. If you can get reliable results with less computational cost, effort, whatever, then you start to do new things like the noise factor studies, running multiple runs, seeing how robust it is. It's extremely informative. You can go into design optimization. You can then start training data sets for AI ML. So there's a real benefit also in trying to get the most bang for buck out of your computational resource. So I wanted to just add that as a balancing point.
No. For me, it's totally clear. We can take advantage of HPC to actually have some reference solutions. I hope that for the next workshop we can have the Windsor at least with 2 or 3 codes in very, very close agreement, and most probably in different machines with different numbers of CPU and different codes. I believe this we can do it, I hope. Well, then we will have to think how to really be cost efficient and be as close as possible to that solution. And well, it could be a final mesh, or it could be even a coarser mesh and a longer transient simulation. But first, we have to have a good reference.
I just want to give Vangelis a chance to speak as well. Sorry, I'll come to you in a second. Oh, actually, you covering the HPC?
Yeah.
Maybe let's check comment because then we'll move on to this.
Yeah, a couple of points from the high-definition simulation experience. Neil and I tried to do cost, how much it cost for its simulation. And I think one metric we did is participants, actually report the resource allocation, like not the cost, and we use AWS cost. We didn't get that from vendors. So that is a uniform costing.
We did the same here.
Oh, all right. So you use the.
I showed that for this.
Okay. And then it was discussed, but I don't know how it's the best way. But accuracy, somehow you can create like a couple of color lines, like you get that from your SRS leads, like which solution is in the acceptable range, and color that with that way this costing table is not really like only the price, right? Some reflection from like I think Burkhard said, 1/3 of the participants meet this ratio, right? That would be green color. But that will give you another information on your cost table.
Yeah, no, I think we all agree. We were very conscious of not stepping too far and then getting a massive backlash from people saying, why did you put our result as the one that's not being accurate? So we wanted to be a little bit, careful and come up with a really good metric that we could stand behind. But stuff like that, even just a simple outliers.
And my last point, maybe I'm going to be controversial here. I'm coming from 35 years high-performance computing background. I don't think it's a good idea to go through calculations. Maybe one or two days with like a benchmark bunch. I think we should push our resources to go to, you know, like much affordable.
Yeah. But I think you're seeing the balance on both. I think, you know, you and Charlie are right that for industry, you're not going to be able to run hero simulation, so you do want the most efficient. But I think in terms of for the academics and also just pushing technology, sometimes it's good to have those big simulations. You know,
I'm thinking that we could have, especially if there's a second one to back it up, a numerical reference alongside the experiment for case one next time round.
Yeah. And yeah, I just want to get.
So from my point of view, just briefly about noise factors and especially mesh-related noise factors. It was something that when the first workshop started, I wasn't aware of. So with every new workshop, I was changing the ANSA version without knowing what's going behind, because I always wanted to use the latest functionality for the best mesh. So I've appreciated the importance, and I'll be very careful from now on to make sure that we make also our meshing as consistent as possible. With respect to the committee meshes, I'm sorry that not everyone is using them. I can appreciate that you cannot force this because some solvers may not have this mesh as optimum, or the meshes were maybe too fine for all of the users to use, or it may be, you know, tactics and your strategy. But I think it'd be nice if everyone could use them, right? Because we would remove one uncertainty factor. For sure, this puts more pressure on the committee mesh, right? It has to be the best possible, consistent, and we should also provide for the next workshop a course version. But I think it's something that we should do. As for the meshing TFG, again, because I think it cannot stand on its own, because it's complementary to all the other things, right? It cannot live on its own because, you know, generating meshes is nothing as if we don't get conclusions, right? So again, I would be looking for feedback from non-open forum users about the mesh so that we know how to fix things for the next version if we're given the opportunity. And yeah, that's about it. You know, my task will be to ensure that we make consistent meshing in all aspects, you know, whether it's the PID sorting or the position of the model or the CPUs, anything. And we provide a better mesh for the next workshop, and both for quality and for mesh resolution, right? A coarser one as well.
Yeah, it has been a bit of a trend, hasn't it? That if we set the workshop AutoCFD1, where it was meant to be everybody would use the mandatory mesh, and I think a lot of people did. Or kind of, and it has steadily reduced.
Yes.
I guess partially because people are using Boltzmann or Cartesian or these sort of different things, or they are wanting to show the capability of their own meshing tool and they want to do it. But I agree with the noise factors you've shown.
Yes.
There is a certain value in having.
I would still say. What I've seen, and I didn't do any counting, but I definitely have seen multiple cases where participants have still run the committee grid and then did investigations with their own measures because
very consistent, very similar results.
Yeah, definitely. But we also always had a reference still with the committee grid. Yeah, I think that's very reasonable. That's something which makes sense. It's good to have this anchor point. That's good. I definitely still like that concept, and I would appreciate if we could keep it. Yeah, because it adds value in my mind. Yeah, if we can do this. But then certainly I think had enough discussion with different participants who said that there is certainly an advantage if they use their own measure because that's specifically customized and whatever else, and that makes sense, obviously.
Maybe we can pivot a little bit.
Sorry, I just had one I think Vangelis and I, we talked quite a bit about the meshing TFG, and I still feel there are elements where I personally would like to think about a bit more. And I always, what comes to my mind here, to give you an example, I know, for example, at Chalmers University, they would always use, I think, a method used, I think Professor Davidson has recommended, where you use time signals in critical areas of the flow field, and you try to see how this time signal shows correlation in neighboring cells. Yeah, and you don't want to see that between two cells which are just next to each other, there's no correlation, because then you certainly did not resolve whatever's going on in this field. So you want to see that at least over a couple of cells, you show correlation. That's for me a logical approach, yeah, to be able to look at your mesh quality. So I think that's taking that and perhaps have some new ideas which might even go beyond that, techniques which allow you to confirm that you have a really valid mesh. I think still makes sense. Yeah, we certainly should not ignore the fact that meshing has a big impact on your results. Yeah, that's the given reality. And we were also talking, that's a bit perhaps also to Herbert's point, we're talking a bit about, could we do this ultimately mesh independent solution, where you have this really high-end mesh, whatever that would be at the end, which can then serve as the golden standard. So that that's something we have never really explored. But perhaps with this idea, which was discussed before, to leverage perhaps some super big resources somewhere, perhaps that could be brought back. So I still feel there are topics which have quite a bit of relevance in this field. But certainly, again, it was obvious that, let's say, throughout the last year, I think we haven't been able to create enough energy around these discussions so that we could really show something. That was my observation here.
So maybe I think the time we have left, it's good to talk about the future a little bit. Maybe first discussion point is, did people find the TFG model worked the best? Yes. Okay. So I was going to say raise your hand, but okay, there we go.
So it's my first time here, but I joined TFG quite late, so I missed out on. I was just saying that I joined the TFG discussions quite late, so I missed out on the early discussions. So I don't know if there's anything that can be done, so if people like me are joining late, whether you can kind of somehow catch up and still be in a position to submit.
Well, Charlie probably took good notes. Yeah. I don't need it. But that's a good point, actually, to sort of keep track of it.
Slightly more formal.
Yeah. What about the areas, the split? Do people feel it was roughly right? Is there one obvious thing missing? Yeah. Feel free to be yours.
Yeah, I think to Vangelis' point, we sort of sat more so on the meshing TFG, but also the noise factors, and it felt like either meshing should have been with noise factors, or there was just a lot of instances where there had been overlap of work between the two. And I think in terms of the meshing TFG, it would almost feel more valuable for there to be more work into exploring actual mesh settings. So I know we've been talking about like a coarser mesh, and this is something I brought up in the TFG, that heuristically 7 layers is something that feels like a lot to me. So I think something in the meshing TFG, it feels like we should be examining some more of those overall mesh settings, which does translate to noise factors in a sense, but I think it's more large scale changes that isn't the minor kind of change we typically think about when we talk about noise factors. So I think in the meshing TFG there should probably be some more focus on that side of more global exploration, I would say.
Any other thoughts on the sort of TFD distribution? What about the meeting sort of schedule every 5 weeks? Did that kind of work?
I think TFG worked really well. Just one additional comment. My experience, like we were in the SARS, and it works out great, but I want to know what's going on those factors and HPC, because it's extremely related. You don't have runs anymore, and all those factors are under SRS activities. So I'm just thinking out loud here. Is it better to combine those two TFGs so people, I mean, you can do post-processing and everything later, but maybe more participant or observers?
I think we consciously decided that we would not run any sessions in parallel. Yeah, let's say whoever would be interested could join like every TFG. Yeah, so that I personally still feel having a bit of a split and having a bit more of a focus, knowing that everything is related with everything else some way or the other. But I felt that from focusing discussions that it was pretty good. That was
Sorry, I cannot play. I forgot, sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a valid. There's always, I mean, we don't have to decide right now, but there's always a discussion on if you split 5, do you gain something, or do people lose touch and feel they're not? But then if you do bring them together, is 1 hour enough? Is there too many people trying to speak? I think that's something we need to think about. It's a good discussion topic, though.
And the realizability of what can actually be done. I mean, let's not forget, last workshop, we had nothing. And then there was maybe an info event, and then the workshop itself, and then something after, and then that was it. And now we're doing every week, something's happening. And so there's a lot more activity, a lot more communication can be really beneficial. But there's at some point there's a limit of what we can really actually do, and also about the demand on participants. Like maybe if it's sort of implied you have to dial into these things every week to stay in touch, it's maybe just too much to ask. But
yeah. Another sort of quick fire question. Would people prefer the next workshop to happen in 1 year time or in 2 years time? So 1 year time, put your hand up. 2 years time? Okay. Okay. And then what about test cases? Okay, it's not about making a decision right now, but just get input.
One thing I want to add is about the cases. Maybe
hold on, just wait for the microphone.
About the space is also to take academia a bit more. As you said, maybe academia are coming, or even OEM are coming here to take something new. So I don't know if there's something new coming. Where are the area? Where you think is it? For example, in my mind, what is missing here in terms of physics modeling is a rotation of, in general, of a tire. So not necessarily maybe in the whole drive air, even just a tire, in the wind tunnel, put the tire rotating on a belt, just simulate that as an open tire. And maybe you can attract academia about the different approaches, 100 different approaches you have to rotation tire, or is there anything else that I don't know? There are trends of novelty that can attract.
So that's one. So you're basically saying more physics, not necessarily a new test case, but
yeah, test cases in terms of maybe one test case can be a tire or a geometry.
Yeah, this is the academics for building blocks. So the building block of a base flow, bumper flow, and building block of a rotating wheel. So we can focus on that because that's clear weakness in the current industrial approaches.
But I think one additional thing that some people have said to me is one option is you could just have a drive air where case 2B or 2C is rotating tires and moving floor. So you've not changed the geometry, you've just essentially added things. Do anybody else have any ideas on test cases?
Someone the people exhibitions in the session over and over, but one thing I brought up to a few people is maybe there could be some interest in going to maybe a state-back version of the driver to sort of bridge the gap between Windsor, which is really this full bluff body in its simplest form, maybe it's understudied as a problem or something, and driver, which has a full complexity, but with completely, well, not completely, quite different physics. And maybe the state back sort of bridges the gap between the two. Then again, that adds a new physics.
Yeah.
I think it all makes sense. Yeah. I guess it's fair to say that perhaps the hottest topic, which I see at the moment in the automotive OEMs when it comes to CFD methods in aerodynamics, is rotating deforming tires. Yeah, but the one thing I can tell you, that will be a long journey with a lot of complication, which there's not. What should I say? It will be a long way to go. Yeah, and certainly, I think it's of highest interest to us. Yeah, and if we could do something magically on this, then everybody would be interested. Yeah, that's for sure. But my fear is that we need to look into so many aspects that will keep us busy the next 10 years. Yeah, and that's a comment I have here. The other overall thing, what always attracted me a lot with when Neil got started with this with Gary, is this idea of having this standardized reference case where specifically now we see so many new ideas coming up, so many new software tools coming up, that we have this reference we can relate to. And it's clear, this is only an entry cup, that this does not answer all questions. Yeah, it's just one reference. Yeah, so I fear a bit if we keep adding many other vehicles, yeah, we'll start having. We're not talking about the same story anymore. Yeah, we'll sit here. Somebody will talk about this estate bag, somebody about an SUV, somebody about an isolated tire, and it might all be interesting. But I think at the moment, I get the feeling that whatever is presented here is relevant to everybody because everybody has kind of worked on this and has an opinion about this. But if we have too diverse set of different topics, then we lose some of this. There are pros and cons for both.
So this may not be a right question, but this is my first time to this workshop. So AutoCFD workshop, I was expecting there will be Aeroacoustics also should be included in one way, and that's maybe the OEMs like how much important Aeroacoustics. So you are going to SRS, like all those scheduling simulators. Could also be, if there is test data on an existing test model, like there might be another TFC or Aeroacoustics.
I mean, this is the eternal debate of, and it's the same with other workshops. How much do you expand and go into more? Or do you sort of double down a little bit more and not try to do everything? You know, for the same reason, I guess if you look at the AIAA, they have a hybrid workshop, they have an Aeroacoustics workshop, they have a drag. They could technically join them and just have lots of test cases, but it sort of gets hard and you have more people who are trying to fit in the room. Personally, one of the things I like about this workshop is it's not the profit. It's done, we kind of try and keep it to this number. We could aggressively market and try, but we wanted to keep it almost this so you can chat and have dinner. And so there's a certain advantage in a way of not letting us go too big, but they are.
So what Burkhard was saying is that focus that we're all working on is that then that gives much more, you know, so so we maybe lose that focus.
Otherwise, it's split into the Aeroacoustics group.
But it's a good point. I mean, there's many people, although from what I understand, a lot of the time in the auto companies, you tend to sort of, it's like a different group almost. Is that true?
It could. I think there's all kind of arrangements. I'm not. I think in our case, I don't know. I'm overseeing many of these things, but I'm aware of other companies where it's entirely different teams which have kind of no relationship and have entirely different software tools they are using. So it could be anything. Yeah, and I said it's a hot topic. Yeah, we heard water management being mentioned before. It's an interesting topic. I mentioned that vehicle energy management. So there's interesting topics all over the place. Yeah, but
maybe I guess a final.
I suppose just carry on. I suppose one of the points there is the difference between compressible and incompressible solvers that you have added value. So when you're looking at the cost metrics, there's the direct aeroacoustics calculation in there, which I guess is the
No, that's fine. I was just going to say, I know some people have flights to catch, so we probably will have a final comment. That doesn't mean people can't keep chatting. It's just I know a lot of people hate it when conferences go over because you're like, I need to get out. So maybe we'll just take a stop over.
All to make a short comment in favor of keeping the setup as it is, because what I personally like about this workshop setup is it is very simple. So the cases are simple, modeling is simple, and still we see a lot of variation in the data. And for us personally, well, my company and what we do is very helpful to see which methods do work, how good or how bad. So we can see how can we improve, what method can be adapted for us, what is working for us very well in comparison to others. So this is very helpful for us as an ISV to improve our tooling, and I think it's the same for the others. And if you want to introduce more complexity, at least for a small community or for you, the costs for participating here are going up. All the evaluations, all the runs, and also it's binding resources, and then it's getting difficult to submit everywhere and be everywhere in discussion. So this is the risk that I see if you will make it more complex.
So a couple of maybe points. I think we were discussing, we'll probably send an email out. We were planning to hold probably in, I guess, around a month's time, some sort of virtual catch-up where we'll be able to maybe show a bit more analysis that Burkhard, Gary, and others have been able to do. We'll also be able to hopefully give a little bit more plans on sort of future workshops and invite more interest. So one of the things, look out, we will try, because I think it's not easy with the virtuals to have a follow-up and we can sort of close some items out. But I think all of us want feedback, and so if you email us through the groups or individually. But I did want to just say before we finish that Ben has done a fantastic job of organising this.
But I also want to thank everybody coming and the support of the organising committee and the technical focus groups, and also to thank Shaka and Ross and Adam and Alex for helping keep things running smoothly on the registration test as well, and the people in the hall, even though they won't hear me, and the people in the hall as well. So thanks all.